All right, thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name is Christoph Lisai. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works, overseeing the Engineering and Construction Division. And today, along with the design team, I'm going to be presenting on the Santa Cruz Avenue and Alameda de los Pulgas Complete Streets project. So one thing I'd like to state is we are going to try to record this meeting through Teams so that we can post it on the website and share with those that are unable to attend today. So just be aware of that. And we hope that the audio gets picked up by the recording. So quickly, I'll go over the meeting agenda for today, starting off with introductions, the meeting logistics and rules. Then we're going to go into the background of a project just to refresh everybody's memory of how we got here, followed by a presentation from our design firm on the current design. And then we'll go into some design issues and considerations that we've identified, go over the next steps and grant funding that we've secured, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers. So we have a lot of folks here from our design team. And so first I'd like to start off with introducing Supervisor Ray Mueller. And I believe he's going to take a few moments to say something.
Thank you, everyone. So I was just going to ask, how many people here actually live in Menlo Park, just by a show of hands? Great, excellent. So my name is Ray Mueller. For those of you who don't know me, I was recently elected to the Board of Supervisors here in San Mateo County. And there's a number of projects that my office has initiated, but this one we actually inherited. And so right now, what I'm actually trying to understand, I'm actually learning in depth about the project. I'm also trying to make sure that I understand how the community feels about the project. There's been, I'm very grateful. There was a community task force at one point, and we're going to go ahead and go through the background of this project and how it came to be. But just real quickly, there was a unanimous vote of that community task force that brought forward this design. And then the Board of Supervisors, hello? Yeah. Hello? Oh, lights on, please. Okay. So then there was a community task force that met, and then went to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors actually went and approved that design that the community task force picked. And our county staff has worked diligently since that time on this project. And the county believes this is the will of the community. And so it's really important, what I really need to try to understand tonight is the feedback from the community about this project as we go forward. There's a lot of wonderful safety elements of this project. There's a lot, but there are also some trade-offs. And it's really important to me as a supervisor to understand that out of the balance between those, that we reach a compromise that works for the community. And so, but I just want to say how much I am grateful to our engineering staff, how much I'm grateful to the county who's worked so hard on this. There's a lot of dollars that have come into this that have come, frankly, from out of this area to fund this project. And so it's a really exciting thing to see that happen. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that design works for everybody. One of the things that I'm actually kicking around right now is whether or not we actually could explore doing a pilot of the project. And I can't announce that we're going to do that yet because I just sprung it on folks today.
All right, are you trying to fail this?
No, sir, I'm not. When I'm trying to understand.
It sounds like you inherited something and you're automatically trying to push it back to a pilot project.
I appreciate your comment, sir, but if you could wait until the question and answer session, I'd really appreciate it. And so what we're really trying to understand is what those trade-offs are, but we are, so we want to share all this information with the community and get that feedback. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. I guess before I go on, can you guys see the screen okay? Do we need to? Okay. I guess we can try to play with the lights. Nothing critical on the screen now, so we'll work with the lighting. So in terms of some of the other people we have here, several folks from the Department of Public Works. We have our Director of Public Works here, Ann Stillman, in the back. We also have Quavo, who's a deputy director of our roads department. Joe Lococo, who was recently retired, and we were able to get him out of retirement to help us with this project since he was there from the beginning. We have Diana Shu, who's one of our senior engineers in the traffic division. Again, she's been with the project from the beginning. And then Carter Choi, a senior civil engineer, and Johnson Young, an associate engineer, who are on the project team. From our consultant, Kinley Horn, we have John Pulliam and Akash Patel. So they're taking the lead on the design. A couple of the meeting logistics. We do have a sign-in sheet at the front door. If you guys want to provide your information, we'll be able to track who attended and use that as a way to provide community updates. The website is also a great resource for you. There's a subscribe now button, and then if you hit that, whenever there's an update on the website, it'll get pushed out. A couple just logistical things. There's a bathroom right in the front to the left. In case of an emergency, we'll just evacuate through the doors over there and meet in the by the playground. Again, we'll have a question and answer opportunity at the end of the meeting. So if you could please wait or hold your questions until then. We've provided comment cards for you guys to provide questions on. We'll be able to collect those when it's time for the question and answer. We'll go through those first, and then we'll also open it up to just further questions. A couple of meeting rules I'd like to go over. It's been a while since we've had a public meeting like this since COVID, and so please, only one person speaking at a time. We have what we call a 3x3 rule, which is everybody should wait until 3 other people have spoken or 3 minutes have passed before speaking again. We want to give everybody an opportunity to provide input. This is a public discussion, not a debate, and so our goal here is to hear as many of your viewpoints, your concerns, and your comments. And then I also encourage everybody to actively listen and respect others' point of view. So, as many of you are aware, this project has been in the works for a long time. We started in 2017 with the creation of a task force to work on the improvement study. The task force held its first community meeting in August of 2017. In September of 2018, we had a survey of the local community. Respondents agreed to reduce the number of travel lanes on the corridor in exchange for opportunities to provide multimodal benefits. And so that includes pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. In the summer of 2019, we installed a pilot project, which is those delineators you saw as you're traveling northbound on Santa Cruz at the Y. And then in January of 2020, a public meeting was held to present the preference and the results of a community and a subsequent online public survey, and to select the preferred alternative. In August of 2020, the feasibility or the final study was completed and was released with the recommendations of the preferred alternative. And then finally, in October of 2020, we took the preferred alternative to our Board of Supervisors, and they adopted us and directed us to move forward with design. A couple points I'd like to make out. It was a community-driven process. The survey in 2018 had a total of 701 responses. The subsequent survey in 2020 had a total of 537 responses. The task force met 19 times. We've had 2 community meetings so far, with this being the 3rd. I do want to take this opportunity to thank those individuals that were on the task force. Some of you are here today, others are not, but we appreciate all your effort along the way. This just lists the task force members that were integral to making this project. So in terms of the background, I just wanted to take a few minutes to orient everybody in terms of the project limits. We talk about certain areas on the project, and so I just wanted to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. One area that we studied was the Y intersection. So this is the intersection between Alameda, Santa Cruz, and Campobello. We have another segment on Santa Cruz that is between Alameda and Sharon. A second segment on Santa Cruz between the Y and Sand Hill Road. And then the third segment, which is Alameda between AV Avenue and the Y. We also took, during the study, we looked at 4 alternatives. So the design team through the study developed 3 alternatives, and all of these were compared to a no-build alternative or what is out there currently. So alternative A included 2 lanes in each direction through the corridor. Alternative B was 1 lane in each direction. And then alternative C was 2 lanes in the northbound direction and then 1 lane in the southbound direction. As far as what the task force and the study recommended, we looked at the section between Santa Cruz, between Sharon and the Y, and no improvements were recommended for this segment because of the limited right-of-way. It's not nearly as wide as the other segments, and the improvements that the community chose just wouldn't be able to fit, and so that was not included in the project. Alternative C was selected for the Y intersection, which would be 2 lanes in the northbound directions, 1 going to Santa Cruz and 1 going to Alameda, and then 1 lane southbound. And then also as part of that configuration, there would be a no turn on red at the signal. Yeah, so north is going this way, south is this way. And so, yeah, it's a little unique because the Y, we call this North Santa Cruz, even though it's technically west. And then this is North Alameda. As far as the Santa Cruz between the Sandhill and the Y, alternative C was selected for that as well. So that was 2 lanes northbound and 1 lane southbound. And then for the segment between AV Avenue and the Y on Alameda, a road diet was selected. And so if you guys are familiar with a road diet, it's basically a process where the number of lanes are reduced in order to gain extra width to provide other improvements like widening sidewalks, installing bike lanes, buffers, things like that. So this is done with different ways. You can either make the travel lanes narrower or eliminate travel lanes. And in our case, we did a combination of both. And then as Supervisor Mueller stated earlier, all of these were recommended by the task force as the preferred alternative. So after the study was completed and approved by our Board of Supervisors, it was brought onto the design section for us to take the preferred alternative into something that is buildable. We worked to obtain grant funding for the design, and in late 2020, the county was awarded $700,000 from the San Mateo Transportation Authority to develop the project specifications and design work. And the funding was contingent on the approved alternative, as discussed earlier. In August of 2021, we started the design for the plan, specifications, and estimate. And in 2023, the county was awarded a second grant through the Caltrans Regional Active Transportation Program, or what we call ATP Cycle 6, for the construction funding. The Caltrans grant included a total of $5.435 million, so it was a pretty big chunk of money. And right now we're on track to finalize the design by the end of this year. And so with that, I will turn it over to John Pulliam from Kimley Horn to go over the details of the design.
Good evening. I'm John. I came on board, Akash and I came on board on this project. This concept had been selected and we were brought on board to take this concept and turn it into design plans and construction contract documents so the project can go out for bid and ultimately for construction. Can we see this? I can work in the dark. That's okay. Yeah, we can go. I'll be okay. Yeah. Clicker does not work. Okay. So maybe we talked about the project being a lane diet, right? We're taking 4 lanes and we're taking 2 of those lanes and repurposing them so that we have room to provide other improvements out on the project. And I'm not gonna, this was the approved concept. And what I want to do is talk really high level at what the approved concept consisted of. For pedestrians, it consists of going through the corridor and replacing and upgrading existing sidewalk. We've got sidewalk that's not wide enough to comply with ADA. We've got broken sidewalk. We've got missing gaps of sidewalk. So the project will be replacing the sidewalk so that we have smooth ADA compliant, accessible sidewalks on both sides of the street. We look at making pedestrian related improvements at intersections to provide a safer experience for pedestrians crossing the street. This is done through the creation of bulb outs, right? Where we widen the sidewalk out at the corners. We shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians as they have to cross the street. Less time for us to be exposed to being hit by something when we're crossing the street. We also are incorporating raised islands and raised medians on different. Gosh, can you flip one up for me? Let's get to the Y. So we're using some medians and islands in the street to help provide refuge areas for pedestrians as they're crossing. These also just help to slow traffic. Another part of this is that as we go from a lane diet from 4 to 2 lanes, it's going to be a slower street, right? We've got 1 lane in each direction. We're going to have some channelization taking place with these raised medians. It's going to give you, as you drive on the street, it's going to be that feeling of the road's a little bit narrower. It's not going to be as comfortable to drive as fast on the street. And that's a big part of what's happening here is that narrowing of the feeling as a driver that this is not a street I'm meant to drive 40 miles an hour on. It's a street that I'm comfortable driving 25 miles an hour. And that's done through a variety of factors, including incorporation of a single lane in each direction, as well as the channelization through these raised medians. This lane diet also, as we discussed, gives us room to put on-street buffered bike lanes. And so we have bike lanes that are being incorporated along the corridor. Along most of those bike lanes, we'll have also a stripe buffer next to it. So the bike, as a cyclist, you're not going to be right next to traffic. You're going to have an area that's striped out that provides an additional space between you and the vehicle that you're riding your bike next to. As part of all this, there's a lot of trade-offs that go into it. And I think that's why as we come in as designers and are handed a concept, we want to be very respectful of those trade-offs that were discussed and respect those as we move forward with the design. One of those trade-offs was parking. And so as part of, I think right now out there are 105 parking spaces. In the approved concept, the parking went to 87 spots. So a loss of 18 spots was anticipated. As we went through final design, there were 4 more locations where we needed to eliminate parking. So a total of 22 parking spaces are being lost as part of this project. And what happens is, as we take this concept and refine it, right, we get more information. We get survey. We find out that maybe the road's a little bit wider or narrower than we thought. And so as we really start to lay this out, we find additional pinch points, and those are the locations where we had to eliminate a few more parking spots. But certainly our approach has been to preserve as much parking as possible as we move forward on the design of this project. So let's click over from here and go to the design plan as it. Let's just go one more to the design. So hopefully you can make out what's going on here. Far right. So we're starting here on the west side. Right. So we begin the lane diet, right, as we begin moving east on the project. And you can see we have these green areas. These are our bike lanes on the side of the road. You can kind of see here, these are these stripe buffers that where we can incorporate, we incorporate those as protection for this bike lane as it moves along the street. We still have parking. Parking is actually still up against the curb. Okay. Sorry about that. Correct. Correct.
Repeat the question.
So, yeah, is there a problem? Are we oriented okay?
Alameda.
Yeah.
This is Alameda.
The title says,
Title.
yeah, it's red label.
Okay. Ignore the title. Focus down here. We're on the Alameda, right? Yes. So at Liberty Park, we're maintaining that existing, there's an existing uncontrolled crossing here. We're maintaining that. We are introducing those rectangular rapid flashing beacons like we have further down the project. So we'll have those in, which will provide some notice to drivers when when someone is crossing the street here. We're incorporating islands here. So as we see these features here, those are raised islands that you're used to seeing out in the middle of the street to help, and the intent is that the whole intent is to kind of narrow that field to drivers as you approach this intersection and you see this raised item. That's something which slows you down as a driver. Moving on the street, we have two-way left turn lanes incorporated as well as a single lane of traffic in both directions. Let's advance to the next one. Get to the through here we have new bulb outs going in, right? So here at Sharon we have like these bulb outs that are going to help narrow and just make this a more comfortable intersection for pedestrians to cross. Pretty consistent section of the road through here with one lane in each direction, buffered bike lanes, and pretty much maintaining all the on-street parking through this section of the street. Let's get to the Y. So at the Y, we have a couple things happening. We have the incorporation of some new raised islands and medians out here. We have some new crosswalks going in to provide the ability for pedestrians to move through this intersection in a safer way. We have the ability for cyclists as they approach this intersection. We split the cyclists whether you're going to go onto the Alameda or up Santa Cruz. We have two different ways for the cyclists to proceed. Well, we have one lane. Well, we have two lanes coming, and then splitting into one lane for Alameda and one lane for Santa Cruz. Okay, next slide. And then continuing this concept. I mean, this concept's fairly straightforward. We do have the two lanes coming here from Sandhill that then drop when they get to or split when they get to the Y. We have the existing crossing at Palo Alto Way that's going to just be reconstructed and improved again with that same rapid flashing beacon that's out there now. That will still be in place. And then continuing all the way down to Sandhill with sidewalk and bike improvements. I think again that's a fairly high-level summary of the changes that are proposed for the project. A couple of things I wanted to jump into, just some understanding about like what are these islands that we're proposing out here. I mean, again, these are, I think, pretty typical of what you would see driving around. These are just raised curves. These are raised islands. As a pedestrian, these are features that we just walk through as street grade, right? We don't ramp up and over them. They provide some channelization for vehicles. Again, they slow vehicles as they approach these, and it provides a way for pedestrians then to just walk through those. I think this next picture, this is just wanted to just clarify kind of the type of treatment we're talking about, right? Very standard type of cut through that you would see, at roundabouts or at locations where a crosswalk is moving through a median. And these are based off a Caltrans standard design that we use all across California. We did want to go back and just highlight, we stayed very, very close to the preferred alternative. There were very few changes that we had to make. I mean, there were some tweaks as far as kind of how the lanes were laid out, but really I just wanted to walk you through the few things that we did have to change. One was there was a bulb out proposed here at the Y, maybe about a 5-foot bulb out to shorten this distance. One of the challenges was as we really laid out the geometrics of the lanes across the Y. And I think we all can agree this can be a confusing area to drive through, and we wanted to be very careful about those lanes being lined up as well as we could through that intersection, not having strange, little changes in the geometrics and the nice smooth curves. And so as we laid the lanes out through here, we really needed all that space to feel that we had the most comfortable experience for drivers and the least confusing experience for drivers. And so as a result, that bulb out down here was something that we could not incorporate and really get that lane that lane orientation through the intersection that we felt we needed to make this as safe as possible. Next slide. Yeah, we had this huge kind of median was proposed here along Alameda approaching the Y. A couple things about that. One, we didn't feel it was costly, and as far as just bang for the buck, we didn't feel like that was going to really give us as much improvement as far as safety and slowing of traffic. It also restricted some of the access to these driveways. So we shortened that median down, keeping it at the intersection where we felt it really provided the greatest value in terms of slowing traffic. And the last one was this bike lane here approaching the Y was proposed as being a class 2 bike lane where right turns would weave through, kind of a traditional way that a class 2 bike lane would have been handled at an intersection with the right turn. One of the things that really concerned us here was just this offset, right? So if you're a right turning vehicle and you come through here and make this turn, you're kind of conflicting with this bike as well as it moves through the intersection. And that we really felt, even though what we proposed to do now is just go to Sharrows here, because we just feel like it's a much more appropriate treatment to let a cyclist know you're entering into an area where you really need to be hyper vigilant of understanding that you're sharing this location with vehicles. We want vehicles also to be aware that they're sharing that. And so what we propose here is that class 2 lane turns into Sharrows with the right turning vehicle, so that conflict is just highlighted, and we don't set cyclists up for this feeling that they are in a protected location here when really they're sharing this with vehicles that are making a right turn, and we just didn't feel like that was a comfortable and correct way to mark that on the street. Okay, with this, I think I'm going to hand this over someone here at Public Works to walk through some of the design issues and considerations.
Thank you, John. So as we continue to move the project to the 100% stage, we have identified some design issues and considerations that we're still working through. If any of you have walked up and down the corridor, you know that there are a lot of private retaining walls and gardens that are adjacent to the sidewalk. And so we've definitely identified locations where we think these are going to be of concern. Unfortunately, we don't know the age, the construction, or how far the foundations of these retaining walls go. And so we'll be working with the individual property owners as we identify potential retaining walls. One reason this is an issue is because as we install the sidewalk, what we typically do is we install it from the back of walk. So I'll get my laser pointer. So generally we would start the construction here. And so we just want to make sure that there's no issues to the private retaining walls. We're going to try to protect these in place as much as feasible, and we'll work with the individual property owners as we identify potential issues. Another thing that we've identified, as you widen sidewalks, you cut into the roadway. Generally the roadway is crowned, which means it's high at the center and then slopes down to either side, and that helps with drainage. As you extend sidewalks into the roadway, they end up being significantly lower than the roadway, and this becomes an issue when we have to deal with cross slopes and driveway slopes. Again, we've identified the locations where we think this is going to be the biggest impact. We'll be notifying those property owners as well and working to mitigate to make sure that the proposed slope is going to be as consistent with the current slope as much as possible. We always take an opportunity when we're doing a project to address design, drainage and ponding issues. So you can see from this photo up here that there are areas in the corridor where there's some ponding after storms. And so we've identified those, and we're going to make sure that when we do the grading, we try to eliminate these ponding areas as much as possible. I think a majority of the time it ends up being in the bike lane, and so we want to make sure that we address any kind of ponding issues so that they're not, the bicyclists aren't affected. As John spoke to earlier, parking spaces are going to be lost, and so we have identified four additional parking spaces that will be affected by the project. We're still looking. Okay, so we don't have that on this presentation, but we maybe after, or we can go to the map in the back and we can try to identify where those are. The study identified the majority of the parking spaces being eliminated. I think it's on the main area is Santa Cruz as you're heading north from Sand Hill, if I'm correct. But yeah. So another thing that we've identified is there are some trees that have been uplifting the existing sidewalk. We've identified 2 locations, and so we've been working with our county arborist, both during design, and we're gonna make sure that he's there during construction as well. Generally what we do is we try to avoid the roots, and we'll likely jog the sidewalk around some of these tree areas that we've identified, and I think there's at least 2 locations. And then finally, utility covers. During our field walks, we've identified a lot of utility covers that are just in disrepair. The lids are broken, they're uplifted. We've already reached out to all the utility providers, PG&E, the cable companies. And so we're gonna make sure that when we go out and do our project, that we either get new boxes and lids, and that we reset those that are flush so that they don't create any tripping hazards. As far as next steps, so like I said, we're continuing with the design with the goal of completing that at the end of this year. We are working through the grant administration process. It is timely. We need to get into an agreement. And so we don't anticipate this project going out to construction until the following year. I can answer your question in a second.
Those involved and fences with like overhead signs, whatnot, right smack in the.
Yeah, so we've identified areas where we believe there's existing conflicts that'll be in the middle of the sidewalk. And for the fire hydrants, we'll be working with the Cal Water, I believe is the purveyor, to have that relocated outside of the sidewalk. All the signs and stuff like that, they'll be reset so that they're where they typically should be. And so we've identified all those issues and we'll make sure to relocate them. So we are working to finish the 100% set and federalize the project. Because it's grant funded. It does make it a little bit more complicated in how we do the bidding, but nothing we haven't seen before. Our plan is to advertise and bid this in spring of 2024, so that would be early next year, and then start construction in early summer of 2024, which is likely May, June. And right now we're anticipating a duration of about 6 months. We are going to post this meeting summary and Q&A to our website. So I have the link here. I believe it was included in the flyer. That's going to be the best source of information if you want to stay updated. There's a subscribe now button on that page. If you click that, whenever we post new information, you should get an email blast letting you know. We've worked out the kinks with our IT folks to make sure that whenever new information is posted, that anybody that subscribes gets the information. So with that completes our presentation. We'll now go into the question answer portion of the meeting. So first we'll start off by collecting the comment cards, and then I'll read our questions kind of one by one, and then have one of our design team members will be able to respond. And then after we go through all the written comments, we'll open it up to the floor for additional questions. And again, I'm just going to leave the meeting rules up here just so we can have a productive discussion. We can turn the lights back on.
Cards, I guess.
Yeah, so we're going to have a couple folks walking around and collecting cards. Yeah, West Bay is aware of our project. I can't speak if they have any projects planned, but they're aware that our project is going in. So they haven't told us that they have anything in the works that they're trying to get done before we go out to construction though. Yeah, the question was, have we been in contact with West Bay Sanitary Sewer District to see if they have any proposed work in the area? And the answer is they're aware of the project and they have not let us know of any proposed work that they're doing. So we don't anticipate that that'll be an issue or anything will happen by West Bay before we go out to construction. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, typically the sewers are installed 4 to 5 feet deep, and so we'll just make sure that we protect it in place when we do our construction. I'm sorry, the question or the comment was that the sewers in the sideline or in the sidewalk. So let me go through the written comments, and then we'll continue with raised hands. All right. So question is, what is the county doing to reduce speed northbound Santa Cruz and cars use it as a superhighway plus use bike lane as 2-lane, totaling my parked car? As John alluded to earlier, we believe that once the project is constructed, the road diet, the chicane, not the chicanes, the raised medians, all that will have a traffic calming effect. Generally, when you have a lot of things in your view shed, you tend to drive slower. And so we believe that once this project is completed, the speed on the corridor will drop. I know that we are also going to be looking at the posted speed limits along the whole corridor to make sure that it's consistent throughout. And then 25 is what we're proposing. Yes. Yeah. So 25 is there's already a 25 mile per hour speed limit for most of the corridor. I think there's a small section on Alameda where it's posted at 30, but we'll make sure that it's consistent throughout.
Looks like we have these maps in the back.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that, just so the north segment to be improved, is that gonna be 25?
So not as part of this project, but the county is looking at the overall area. That'll be through our traffic division folks. So I think you're talking about the Santa Cruz portion from the Y to Sharon. That won't be included as anything as part of this project, but we will be looking at that segment after the project is complete to make sure it's consistent throughout the entire area. All right. Okay, so next question, comment. I do not want a 8 inch by 103 foot long barrier divider in the turn lane for Palo Alto Way. One, it takes away 2 feet from the turn lane and blocks access ingress to 2125 Santa Cruz Ave. And 2, there's no benefit gained from such a barrier, only limits plus takes up spaces. The alternative is to shorten the island. So I'm doing it.
Without pulling that directly up, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think as far as these islands go, we stuck exactly along the lines of the islands and medians as they were laid out in the concept design, with the exception of the one island we discussed that was shortened. And so, I mean, we are open to continuing to look at those islands and make sure that we feel like the lengths of those islands and locations are appropriate and provide value in slowing traffic. But that is the intent, is for channelization and traffic calming. So we can, we'll continue to look at that and make sure that we're not trying to propose islands just to cut off access. Those were proposed originally in the alternatives, as I understand it, and discussed as opportunities to calm traffic and channelize vehicles. And so we'll continue to look at those and see if there's opportunities to refine those if they're over designed.
Okay. The next question, what are the possibilities to use greening to calm traffic on Santa Cruz and Alameda? By greening, do you mean just planting, landscaping type things? I don't know if anybody can clarify that question. Yes. So I think right now all of the medians are landscape. Hardscape.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we can look into what possibilities we have there, but I think generally we prefer the hardscape type features. They're easier to maintain. And I think that's what was in the approved alternative as well. So please acknowledge that the design set proceeded too far without community input. You went from high-level concept to detail without input on details. We don't agree with that comment. We believe the preferred alternative gave us a very clear direction on what was shown and what was recommended by and approved by the community. As you can see by the presentation, the majority, if not all of the design we're at now aligns very closely to what was in the preferred alternative, both in terms of lane configuration, as well as the balances between bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles. There are a couple areas where we did have to fine tune it, but we believe it still met the intent of what was in that study. People drive 70 miles per hour in the corridor between Sand Hill and Y. How will that improve? So again, touched on this earlier. We believe that the improvements we have will have a traffic calming effect, both by narrowing of the lanes as well as some of the other features that we're installing. The county made an agreement with property owners that live between
Back in the 60s. The property owners along the Santa Cruz Avenue between Sand Hill Road and the Y had to give up property and so that they could do the original widening. And the agreement with the county was that we would have off-street parking. So now you're taking away some of that off-street parking for some of those people. So is the county going to then reimburse those people for picking up what they originally had to give up? That's a question.
Yeah.
Got on-street parking in front of our houses, and we have to give up some of our property.
And I'll talk to that I think showing this design without actually showing the explanation, you're talking about 22 parking spots. That's a lot of parking spots for one section. He said it's concentrated. Somebody said it's concentrated. I think not showing that as part of the design is a major flaw for this presentation.
I hear what you said, 10% decrease.
It was just commenting that there should have been something showing what parking spaces were affected as part of the design. I know the preferred alternative exhibits had them. It probably wasn't clear to see, but there was identified parking spaces for removal, both in terms of the preferred alternative in the illustrations that we had, but noted in terms of the agreement with the property owners on Santa Cruz. I'm not aware of any agreement. I mean, I'm definitely things that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibilities, but we can take a look into our files and see if there's any kind of agreement that we're aware of when that original widening was occurred. So the driveways to 2160 and 2140 Santa Cruz are often blocked with cars backed up from Sand Hill Road. The keep clear marks are too far apart. Please paint two keep clears, one in front of each driveway. We can definitely take a look at that and see if there's an opportunity to better delineate the keep clear and how do we make sure that that's understood by motorists.
Monitoring and enforcing would help a lot.
Yeah. So the comment was monitoring it, enforcing it would help. So Public Works is not, the enforcement agency. That's the sheriff. So we can definitely pass along comments to the sheriff's office and others that in CHP. And so I know they are the ones also in charge of enforcing speed limits, right? And so we're definitely keep them in the loop, but don't really have much say on what their enforcement actions are. Important to plan on excellent warning signals and overhead night lighting way before the project is fully completed, as well as afterward for a period of months to always.
Lighting.
Yeah.
Signals. with lighting at the signals, right? At the signal lines. I think there's some new lighting.
I brought this up because you have not mentioned anything about how you are going to provide ordinance and lighting. And we don't have overhead lighting. We don't have street lights to help us to see where we're going. And we're used to going a certain way and a certain speed. I am not a high-speed driver, but 4 years ago, I was unaware that that the county was making some changes on Rascadero. And I came upon that new configuration at night. And it was like, hello? Now, what is this stuff happening on my right-hand side as well as my left? And anyway, the point is that I got through 90% of that. Thought I was done with it. I mean, it was terrifying. There was no lighting. It was before we painted the things. It was very poor. You know, very, 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 very. Anyway, I got through 90% of it. Thought I was done. And all of a sudden I came upon a huge barrier warning. And so I went to my right and I ran over something on my right hand side and ran to my car. So weeks later, we put in better lighting. Weeks later, you painted the barriers. Weeks later, there wasn't the same problem. But you must, if you're going to put up islands and barriers and whatever you want to call them, for bicycles, to protect the bikes, or to protect whatever, you need to remember that people are got to see way ahead of time what's happening.
So can I think you're talking about Unifracera. Is that right? Are you talking about Unifracera by Lake Log? I mean, that as you're heading towards Page Mill? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, so that's
Yes.
Santa Clara County. That's one piece, and I know exactly what, if that's what you're talking about, that was their project.
Right.
I don't remember about
I'm
the,
not trying to say it'll be the same project.
Right.
But I'm using that as an example.
right, okay.
Very poorly, terms of, helping
Helping people navigate.
there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Understand what was going on.
Okay,
You know it a lot better than me do. You know what you're going to do. And it's familiar to you. We have to.
right. So point, I mean, I'd say, thank you, because point well taken. I definitely know the stretch you're talking about, but clarifying that's the other county, that's Santa Clara County. And I think when I drove through there too,
I don't want to hear about
Yeah.
that.
no, but I feel like when I've driven but through there too, so I know what you're talking about, because it was, in my opinion, that was a project to help reduce the speed. It was a traffic calming project, and you are maneuvering through a lot of different devices to get that. And you can also see the tire, you know, how the tires have hit. So I know what you're talking about, and I don't know the details of whether lighting was an afterthought or beforehand. But on Alameda de las Pulgas and Santa Cruz Avenue, Santa Cruz and then Alameda, we do have a streetlight district, so we do have overhead lighting. But you're bringing up the point that anything new like that, people need to know that it's there, understand there's a change so that they can adapt to it and figure their way through. So that's really helpful.
I don't think that you can depend on, let's see.
Let's move on.
Well, I just want to say that I just spend, some of us in this area are elderly. I may not look elderly, but I'm in that elderly category. I just spent a month at home. Shut away while I was recovering from surgery. And in a month's time, you know, can go by and then you get back in your car.
Right, and there's the change. Okay.
You're not having to
Okay.
listen to a board meeting or reading your statement.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of lighting, lighting is not included as part of the project. I believe this is part of the Menlo Park
Highway lighting district.
Highway lighting district. We do have a process for requesting lights along the corridor that we can provide to you guys, but what we can do is we can make sure that we include in our specs that that the contractor includes like changeable message signs when there's going to be the striping or the lane reconfiguration a couple weeks ahead, so people are aware that there's going to be a change and to be aware, when it happens. Generally, once we're done with the roadway work, we have the contractor go out there and do temporary striping as soon as possible to avoid this thing. Noted, we'll try to include it into our specifications. So next question, can you please display the slide with Santa Cruz south of the Y? For my question, I have concerns about that bike lane.
Like to see the one that shows the approach. So if I understand, for the bicycles moving to the left on this, supposedly northbound, there's a barrier in the middle of that. And is it correct that that barrier is to protect the bike lane?
There's a small barrier, there's a small raised median right through here.
Okay, so I had a comment, and I hope it's to be received. I'm a cyclist. I live just on the going north on Santa Cruz Pestlevine. That approach getting into the bike lane is far too short for the cyclist to move over to that left side.
This right here?
Yeah, that's far too short. And for me, and I think a lot of cyclists would say the same thing, I wouldn't want to be caught dead, literally, between cars traveling nominally 25, but maybe 45, and that barrier. It's a nightmare for me if I have a barrier here and cars going here. So please, I think the neighbors aren't very happy about that barrier, some of them, because it impacts their access. If the barrier is there only to help the cyclists, and the cyclists, I think, mostly aren't going to want to be in that spot. I think a preferred opportunity is to put sharrows in that left lane the whole way and let the bikes and cyclists work together to figure out how they're going to go. And the cars, they'll have to slow down, and cars are learning how to slow down. And I've been cycling in this area for 40 years. Cars are learning how to adapt to cyclists. Some of the old rules about stay out of the way no longer apply. So I really encourage you to look at that option, because cyclists aren't going to want to do this.
So this comes from the preferred This comes from the preferred alternative, and a couple of things. One, I mean, this small island here, island here, is also intended to stop those vehicles that are making. I mean, the idea is to channelize vehicles and may have them make that decision about which direction they're going to go with the Y, and eliminate that as an activity or a movement that could strike a cyclist, right? Because we know folks make last minute changes to swing over to go up Santa Cruz. And so this prevents that from happening, right? Vehicles need to make their decision back here and get into the right lane to be able to make that maneuver.
I don't see that, because that barrier is to the left of both lanes. So they have free latitude in that.
Well, if I'm going up Santa Cruz, I need to move over here, and I can't. If I'm in this lane, I can't now move over here to. I've got to make that decision here. So I believe that really is the intent of that. It's a protection of cyclists from a last minute weaving activity of vehicles. And then just to go back to here, I mean, really, the approach for this weaving movement as we're doing these types, it's to shorten that. I mean, I know we've all seen really long sections of that, but the industry now is moving to really trying to minimize this distance for the bike and vehicular moving.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for this. Yeah.
No, I'm just commenting on what the preferred alternative was. I'm not here to debate all the different options on it, but that's why that alternative was developed that way.
even like different roads. But now at the moment, hopefully going forward, there will still be red for both things traffic at the same time. That's going to be okay. But they changed it when they did the ride program. They made it so all cars have to stop on red. And I noticed a lot less cars jumping and changing lanes at the last minute.
Yeah, I don't have the information on the timing of the signal, but I believe they're not separated. So it's either red or green for both right and through traffic.
That made the biggest difference by observation to people changing lanes at the last minute.
No.
You constantly.
Right.
Sorry, so I'm not going to correct this. So, right. Sure. So, I think what I'm gathering from this and coming back here, what I'm gathering from this meeting, and I'm gathering from this meeting, I'm coming back to your intro, is this feels like a cram down to me, right? Like we keep coming back to the preferred alternative as if that were set in stone in January of 2020. And speaking for myself, I don't think a lot of the community at all appreciated, as COVID was hitting. And then for the next several years, as the designs came out, I never heard of that. I think in one on the website, there was a suggestion that at the 60% design meeting, no comments were received. Look at the audience here. This audience tells you that something was sort of kind of slipping by silently. And, I resent that we keep coming back to the idea that this is fixed. So I don't think it should be. I appreciate that you guys have done a lot of work and have worked with the community to try to come up with something that's better for everyone. But I'm not getting a good feeling tonight.
Well, I appreciate the comments, and I also want to say, please don't take it out of questions. They worked really hard, trying to what they thought was community consensus, and then to go out and get all that fundings. They really had. There's not projects. I'll tell you, in my district, District 3, there aren't projects like this moving in every part of the district. So for them to have done this, they really tried to invest in this community. That said, if you see a disconnect, what's really important is to provide feedback, because I heard what you just said, but what I didn't hear was the why. And what's really important, and I see your hand raised, Ron, and I appreciate it, but what's really important, you can provide that input tonight. That's why we had the meeting. But what's really also important is to write it out on a piece of paper. And the other thing I'd always remind everybody, you guys are doing a good job of it, but always remember, I always try to tell people, never underestimate the power of a kind voice, a sincere heart, and a sharp mind. So, thank you.
Can I respond
Thank you.
to Ray?
Sure.
So, one of the things that I think is not been said here is that after basically 2020, even though Department of Public Works received scores of emails from the community, many in the community have written, and I know a lot of people here have written, and virtually nothing, absolutely nothing has been responded to. The questions we've asked for the last 3 years have not been answered. The concerns we've expressed haven't been addressed. And so I think while we were doing good at the beginning of this thing, when we had community input, we had a task force, but basically in 2020, that all disappeared. And Ray, I think it's great that, yeah, we should be adding comments to Department of Public Works so they can respond. The thing is that they have not responded for 3 years, and I think that's one of the problems why this preferred alternative is something that evolved from the 2020 meeting we had at Las Lomitas. Okay, so I think there's a lot of things here. This parking issue is an issue because it's not just parking. When the street sweeper comes down that narrow little lane approaching the Y northbound, it's going to block traffic. When people put out their trash cans, it's going to block traffic. When the postal service comes, they're not going to be able to, I don't know where they're going to stop. So there's a lot of different issues there beyond just a parking spot. The one critical thing, I'll just make one more point before we're ending here. All along this way, people's homes have been, or their properties have been struck by cars. That means the car crossed the sidewalk and entered the property. Okay, so this is not just one occurrence, this is like a dozen occurrences. And so what we want is not to lose the buffer, which is a safety factor. So parking is not just parking, it's also a way to move the traffic away from the properties. So there's other issues here. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is there needs to be a sit down at an engineering level where we can point out these issues that you aren't aware of. We live here, we know of these issues. And so to just ignore that and not sit down just on an engineering level is not appropriate. We want to have that happen.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ron. I would like to respectfully disagree that we have not been engaging the community. We have seen your emails. I know that you've personally responded to multiple emails that you've said. We had a meeting in the field, both with the county manager and the deputy county manager that you created. You gave us their top 5 priorities. We worked to address those. What we saw is there was a lot of other public comment, and so that's why we decided to have this meeting to try to resolve all these issues in one setting, as opposed to having one-off responses to everybody that's emailing. So, I mean, did we respond to every single inquiry that came in? No, but I feel like we were trying our best to manage the questions and concerns, respond appropriately, while continuing to respect and adhere to what was done in the past. So let me go through a couple more written comments and then, so I've made comments on the 60% and 90% plans, but I've not received feedback and justification. And so this is from John. Yeah, we did receive your comments. We forwarded them over to the design. I think that was an oversight by us by not responding to you, but we do have your comments and yeah, we can follow up. I don't have them in front of us. I know you had comments about several bike related issues, and so we definitely took that into consideration. What specific parking is being eliminated? So again, unfortunately, we don't have that information here. We can definitely follow up with something that we post on the website that identifies all the parking spots that are eliminated after this meeting. If you're interested in that, just go to the website, hit subscribe. If we have time after this meeting, we can try to go to the back and go over some of the parking that we know is being eliminated. Are there any design elements to protect cyclists getting into the left-hand turn lane onto Sand Hill?
Right, as far as cyclists moving in to make a left there in Sand Hill, yeah, right now, yeah, there's not a, like you said, there's not a bike lane proposed, or a bike box in that area. If that's a major movement for cyclists and something that is of interest, that's certainly something that we could continue to take a look at. That is a very difficult movement to make across traffic there as folks are approaching that intersection. So I tend to not be a real big fan of those types of bike facilities. However, I know some of us that cycle more often, like I would be comfortable doing that myself. So if that's something that's of interest, we can look at a possibility of incorporating something there for cyclists who are comfortable to get out and make that left turn with the left turning movements.
So next one's going to be for you too.
Okay.
Describe what happens to the lane southbound from Campo Bello to Sand. I think it's this right here. That's Campo Bello.
Wait, are we talking right here, these lanes approaching? Okay. Okay.
From the Y to Sandhill.
That movement,
So it's going to one lane.
this is one lane.
And
Right.
On Santa Cruz, it's going to one lane as well.
Correct. It's one lane to one lane.
It's going to,
It's, Santa Cruz is 2 lanes now. Yes. It's one lane. It's one lane here. It's one lane as we approach, and it's one lane on the other side.
that's over here. It widens out.
Yeah, I mean, it might be easier to look back. I mean, this is all, it might be easier to look back at these diagrams on the back where it's, I know, I'm just like, it's difficult for even me to see this up here. So
I can, so as you're going towards Sand Hill, once you pass Menlo Commons, it goes from one lane and then expands into 5 lanes. 2 turning left onto Hansett, 2 onto Sand Hill turning left, 2 going straight onto towards Alpine, and then 1 right onto Sand Hill. Yeah, I'm not sure what that distance is. Yeah. Yeah, maybe 300 feet. Yeah, that's some of the trade-offs with, you know, doing the road diet and reducing the lane width to 1 going southbound. How did the 2 schools and parents feel about potential traffic cutting through Sharon Road and AVF to get to Sand Hill onto 280? Did we do any traffic analysis on the side streets?
I don't believe there was a subject to it as part of the original work.
So we did do, mhm.
Correct. So common sense just tells us we're going to start to cut on 80, and if they don't cut on 80, they're going to cut on Sharon.
yeah, so
Are schools aware of this plan?
What I can do is go back and look at some of that, at the work that was done leading up to the preferred alternative selection.
I'm having 2 lanes on Alameda. Really going to, I live at Sharon and Alameda. In the 18 months before
Say there may be
it's just and I had to grab the child fully managed way.
Okay.
2 lanes. A truck went round this 1 car, round red light, and hit the car with a
Not arguing.
but the point is, crazy. I'm happy with it. When you walk cars going up, down, which is very narrow between Alameda and school.
Let's ask the other parents.
Yeah, as a parent, my car crosses that road every day, twice a day. I think it's.
Okay, one other quick question. He's here from the fire district.
So we have John Johnson in the back from the fire district.
For us, our whole aspect is obviously seeing what the community wants and needs, and I work with the designers to make sure that the fire district response is that we're able to make our turns into and out of all of the roads. And when it came to the medians, these are all rolled curbs, so we can actually roll over the medians so that if there is a traffic backup, we can roll over and continue on. Because this is a primary response route for the fire district. And so we are looking at that. We've been able to work in the design to ensure that we can still meet the needs of the community. Any of our rollovers. Yeah.
Not easily. So it's very common for us to incorporate the special curb that fire trucks can mount. But they're not necessarily something that a vehicle can easily mount though.
And you confirm that the ambulance needs to get through there.
Yeah, well, an ambulance is different than a fire truck. I mean, fire truck, we're working with a vehicle that has like a very large turning radius. And so that's where these challenges. We work with fire to make sure that these large vehicles that have a difficult turning radius can make all the maneuvers they need to make. As part of the rest of the design, we look at turning movements of a typical vehicle to make sure that those vehicles can all make it, and that includes ambulances. So the medians have been modified in a way to address the fire truck movements.
So, that things we will look at is any road diet. Obviously, we like more lanes if we're dealing with this traffic. That's our preference, but we understand safety concerns. So when it comes to road diets, what we want to eliminate is the ability for people to be able to pull over to the right when we do have sirens and lights, right? So in ambulance, that's where we're actually okay with having bike lanes, et cetera, because it allows traffic to pull over so that we can continue to pass by. And when there is backed up traffic and that doesn't occur, we do have the ability to utilize the other side. We do not like to go against traffic because we still need to abide by the laws of the road, but that doesn't occur. That's going to be on limited times of, intense traffic. But my whole thing is not constricting traffic to so narrow and having, whether it's a hard median that we can't cross over, a hard median, and whether it's holdouts or trees and planters that do not allow the public to move over so that we cannot pass safely. With this design, we have the ability to let the public do that and offer us for consideration so that we can still proceed.
Can you confirm that on the 90% plans, those were, I think they were paved curves, which are sharp curves that are 8 inches tall for the medians. Is that plan now changed to have a different kind of curve?
Well, there'll be two types of median curb. There's two types of median curbs. Some are going to be non-mountable, and then the ones that fire has identified as being medians that they need to be able to mount would be mountable curbs. So we'll have two types of median curbs.
Can you send out something that points out where those are later after?
We can identify those, yeah.
Bays clearly marked with large sign, the street names, Alameda and Santa Cruz at the Y. Currently, there is only one set of signs, many yards in front of the Y. Once drivers are at the Y, they don't know where to go. So we did try to address this through a combination of pavement markings. And I know that there's an overhead sign, like you said, in advance of the Y. Some of the pavement markings here try to identify which lane to queue in. And so we can take a look to see if there's other opportunities for overhead signage to better delineate. But we'd have to take a look to see where that's. We just had it replaced, I think, so it should be fairly new. I mean, it is the overhead sign that's, I think, near Palo Alto. Yeah, so we can take a look and see what improvements we can make there, see if we can install a bigger sign. Please consider impact on nearby neighborhoods as people cut through to avoid Alameda being one lane. Lucky Ave would be obvious cut through to get to AV and downtown Menlo Park. And we got 7 huge new homes with ADUs built on Little Lucky Ave. So traffic will already be massively increased with many more residents on the street and more parked cars on the street. So I think we talked about the cut through issue. It's going to be definitely through a road diet. That's one of the cons, right? Is vehicles try to find different ways around, but we feel, that the overall benefits of the project are there. Are there islands and staggered crossings on Santa Cruz?
After the diet can be a very wide crossing.
Mhm.
And are there, instead of having these crossings being one route there and further down closer to Sandhill,
Okay.
these are just one huge long crossing.
Mhm.
Is there any chance of putting an island in to split it so people only have to cross one side of traffic at a time? Instead of crossing.
Yeah, I mean,
All that, that's a.
that used to be, I mean, I follow what you're saying, right? But we used to do that, but now now that's just not something we do anymore. We don't want to leave someone stranded in the road. So when we have these long crossings, we want to make sure we give the signal needs to give enough time for someone to cross that entire street. I mean, yeah, for this is signalized.
Sandhill.
Right. I mean, yeah, this is signalized, and so
There's a
this is an RFB, right? So yeah, this is a flashing, this is the flashing indicator to tell vehicles that you're there.
That's the one I think is very dangerous. That's what do with being split into two separate crossings and then they cross one lane at a time.
Yeah, it is, and the real estate or the roadway width here is tight for us to fit much in, but we can look and see if there's an ability to put something in there. Yeah, I mean, it's.
The road diet, you done lanes to 10. Are you thinking about doing the road markings?
No, we would do everything at once. We would include it as one entire project and have the contractor do the concrete work, all the improvements, and then come in and do the striping.
Because as I say, we were talking earlier on, I've seen, because I've moved from Lucky to Sharon, the corner of Sharon, I've seen so many road accidents and people and children nearly being hit because it's 2 lanes of traffic both ways.
Yeah, I think the challenge we see with that is without doing all of the project, I mean, part of the work is extending the sidewalks, and that's really going to give that narrowing effect. So if we were to do some kind of interim striping, I don't.
Split it down to a single lane, that would still have a massive effect on not as I say, I've seen a lot of people running red light on Alameda, and in many cases, because people are swerving around other people that are slowing down, and they've not seen the red light, and they've blown through the red light because they were not paying attention. If there's one is a single lane, they can't swerve around.
Yeah. Yeah, again, at this point, we're trying to do it all as one project. Some of the concerns we have with that is if you do some of the striping and there's these like large areas where, normally the sidewalk's going to go, people confuse that as a lane. We've seen that happen where temporary striping goes in and the bike lane looks much wider than it is.
I just want to point out that crosswalk is the site of the one that you've got fatalities. That very crosswalk. So anything you can do to make sure there's not another fatality would be wonderful.
It's still
They were done very well. They looked it out. They put the flashing, they put the markings. And I think just the road diet with one less, I mean, people drive 50 miles an hour down that road, and that's the problem. I think they've done.
I appreciate that, but the person was in the crosswalk, struck and killed. And I think if any place we should look at, can we do more? That's a good spot.
Coming out of Palo Alto Way, you can't see the right hand turn.
Well, you
can't see the flashing.
There's lots of people can do. I don't know.
You're trying to put that out.
Comes in, so it's very, very hard to exit that location. So entering that location.
He was just mentioning that coming out of Palo Alto Way, the sight distances are challenging, both as you're making the right. You can't see the flashing beacon if somebody's crossing as well as the cars. And so we've highlighted that as an area we'll take a closer look at to see if there's anything else that we can do to better inform both people in Palo Alto as well as, the people coming out of.
Is the light possible?
The traffic signal?
It's mounted.
Yeah.
It wouldn't meet warrants there. I mean, yeah,
That's activated. What you mean?
a hawk.
Are you talking? I mean, we want to keep it just because the distance between the Y and Sand Hill is pretty large. And so it seems like an appropriate place to have a crossing. There's also, I think, a bus stop in the proximity
Yes.
as well as the Menlo Commons area. So we wouldn't want to remove it.
Could the road have a question about Palo Alto Way also? I live on Palo Alto Way. I noticed that the traffic in the morning is going to be slowed down going southbound on Santa Cruz approaching Sand Hill. People, for years, we lived there for over 30 years. People make that left turn at Palo Alto Way when they're in a hurry and bomb down on the street, make a right turn at Vine, and then go over to pick up Sand Hill at Oak. Do you have plans for a no left turn sign at Palo Alto Way at 6 to 9 in the morning? Left hand, a no left turn sign at Palo Alto Way. We will pick up more traffic because people are going to slow down, are going to be slowed down. It's 2 lanes now going south. It'll be slowed down to 1 lane. By the time they get up to Palo Alto Way and they see people backed up, they're going to be more frustrated than they ever have been. And there are going to be more left turns down our little narrow alleyway street. It widens out where we live in the 3rd block, and people, even now, people will come by there at 40 miles an hour because they're in a hurry and they want to avoid that big, double left-hand turn lane at Sand Hill. So I think it's incumbent to protect our neighborhood that you would incorporate a no left turn in the morning sign at Palo Alto Way.
Yeah, so the current design does not have that. I think we can definitely take a look into the feasibility of adding that, but again, that's something that would have to go through.
They're supposed to go to the 2 left-hand turn lanes and turn left from Santa Cruz onto Sand Hill, not come through our neighborhood. And they'll be in a greater hurry if you cut 2 lanes of traffic down to 1.
They put like those little sticky up barrier things to stop a left turn.
Well, I don't know that that's, pardon me, I don't know if that's what is feasible, but I think the easiest thing would be just to make it illegal to make a left-hand turn there in the morning. It's just the cost of a sign.
Right, thank you for your comment. And I know that there are some already
So we have a oak overhanging the Alameda. Will sidewalk accommodations be made to not affect the root system of this tree? It is close to the street. So yes, we've identified several trees that we're going to accommodate and make sure that we either jog the sidewalk around the root system and make sure that we protect it in place. We have certain requirements from the contractor not to disturb roots. My wife is disabled and can't walk up the driveway. She has bars to help her get in her car down the driveway. Can the crew check with her when our driveway is blocked? Will our driveway be blocked for any extended period of time? If you're talking about construction, we can definitely work with specific property owners to accommodate them. We generally do that through our contractor. We provide notification when the project is about to start, both 10 days ahead and then again 48 hours ahead. And when the driveway is affected, we'll make sure to contact those specific property owners so you know when you're not going to have access. There are 4 schools accessed by Sand Hill and Alameda. It is short-sighted to reduce lane access by 2 lanes. If you do this, Alameda should be changed. Read that, not in favor of lane reduction. So I think the gist of it is not in favor of the road diet. That is an integral part of the project. So, I mean, that's one way we get the room to do all the other improvements. Are the lights on Alpine and Junipero Serra going to be timed to prevent backup from Sand Hill and Santa Clara? Yeah, so we are in coordination with the city. I believe they manage that intersection and we'll make sure to coordinate with them on timing. Kind of what we see is once this project is completed, we'll take a look at how the timing works and then we'll have an ability to adjust based on duration and times to make sure that's, we get the most flow through. My concern is how emergency vehicles will be able to get to traffic problems. Can the design be tested first, put up cones plus temp for island? So we've been in coordination with emergency services and fire. We believe that the current design is adequate for getting access. Island obstructing entrance and exit to driveway of residences on Santa Cruz Avenue. I think we're talking, yeah, we touched on that. We can take a look to see if there's an ability to shorten some of those barriers. My main concern is a safe walking / bike pathway along Alameda from Sand Hill Road to La Entrada of off Sharon Road, middle school, 25 miles per hour sound reasonable. Yeah, definitely part of this project will include widened sidewalks as well as improved crossings. So we feel like it'll be a better walking feeling as you're going to the schools. Can you more adequately mark the left-hand turn to Campobello from Santa Cruz? I was sideswiped by a car in the left turn lane that proceeded to go straight and he hit me. So, I think we can try to address this with more signage in advance of the intersection, as well as we included the pavement markings. Definitely trying to make it clear for motorists what to expect as they approach the Y. Please outline how a car will turn left onto Oak Hollow Way from Santa Cruz if they are coming from Sand Hill. Is there still a center turn lane? So there is. There's a center turn pocket that allows that left-hand turn on Oak Hollow. Yeah. Palo Alto intersection is still very dangerous in the design. Visibility is a challenge. Exiting Palo Alto Way, speed will continue to be high northbound. So I think we talked about that already. Can you make the traffic lights more visible at the Y intersection? It is very confusing now. So I believe as part of this, we are adjusting and modifying the traffic signals. We are going to modify the alignment so that it points at the new configuration at the Y. I think there's also opportunities to put in like blinders to make sure that only certain people see the red and the green and things like that. So we'll definitely look into everything that's available to us so that it's clear for what light is directing which vehicle. The community is strongly in favor of proceeding with these traffic improvements without embarking on another pilot. We have secured funding. This is not the time to slow roll or restudy the project viability. Please support this project, Supervisor Mueller. Thank you. Why not paint bike lanes green, especially at the Y? If cars and bikes have to share the right turns at the Y, it will still be confusing. Why have an island near Palo Alto Way? So I believe we do have bike lanes painted, especially at the conflict areas at the Y. I think John explained some of the challenges if you're going southbound and why we're using sharrows. And then why have an island near Palo Alto Way? Yeah, that's why not have one. It says why have an island. We don't, but the barrier.
We'll take a fresh look at this.
Yeah, we'll take another look at that intersection, see what we can do. Is there to be a red light at right turn on Sand Hill Road? So we don't control that intersection. We can check in with the City of Menlo Park. I don't know if it's no right turn on red over there. Yeah, so I don't think we would do that. I mean, there's plenty of room there, especially with the right turn pocket. So that would be on its own timing. All right, so that is all of the written comments.
I'll try to hold this room. So I think generally there's a lot of issues. In 2020, when this went to the Board of Supervisors, Department of Public Works, Jim Porter identified that the Y intersection would be much narrower, that the crosswalks would be much shorter. And yet what we have here, crosswalks are even longer. It just doesn't make sense. Those crosswalks are about 9 lanes long on Alameda there. And it doesn't make sense that you have 9 lanes to cross a 2-lane road. So those are some of the things that we were hoping to get done. It's just that the crosswalks just generally, this is just following the guidelines of the county, what was it called? It was county infrastructure plan for transportation. The crosswalks should be shorter. They should be well lighted. They need to be safer and follow the guidelines that are given by, Federal Highway and NAPCO and the others. The speed is an issue, and so we're always wanting to make sure that the speed is slower. That can be done through some of the design aspects of things. For instance, we don't need a 50-mile-an-hour turn at the Y. If that turn were 25 miles an hour, appropriate to the speed limit, it would be more appropriate. Safety for cyclists, I think we're jeopardizing that. All through the corridor, we should have upward bike lanes, and there's room for that. Yet, some of this design is getting it narrowed down to 5 feet with no buffer. Sometimes the bike lane is 9 feet or 8 feet. We also wanted the traffic lanes to all be 10 feet, but there's situations here where they're 11.5 feet. And so that was the center turn lane by the Y. So anyway, we want to make sure the cyclists are safe here. And an example, if you look at your merge zone just above Palo Alto Way before those medians, that's going to be the most chaotic point in the Santa Cruz. And you're asking bicyclists to join into that chaos, where if you just look, you could move that merge lane all the way down towards the Y, where they only have to deal with 1 lane of traffic instead of all that merge activity. It's just an example. Residential safety, I think, got sidelined here. We want our residents to be safe. We want them to be able to pull out of their driveway or get into their driveway without having to get hit by other cars. So there's sightline issues, there's speed issues, and there's just a buffer that needs to be happening there so that they can get in and out of their driveway safely. And then I mentioned the parking, that it's not just parking, it's a buffer. I won't repeat what I said there. So all of this represents a quality of life issue for the people that live here. So the more we can get these safety issues in, the higher our quality of life will be. And we just don't want to be safe, we want to feel safe. So that's why I think some of these issues we need to really sit down one-on-one with the engineers and go through these to make sure that the community's goals for safety are addressed.
Thank you. That is it. Thank you all.
So there's no confirmation yet on it. It's something that I talked with the county director about today, and it surprised me. So there's some work that needs to do to understand how to do that, what the funding would look like. But it is something that I'm have done in previous road diets so that the community can get used to that. So engineering staff can go ahead and figure out all those areas that need improvement with a partial implementation. I can't promise that's not going to happen here, but it is something that I am thinking about and working and have and started to discuss whether or not that makes sense.
Technically, it'd be striping, but not.
I can't even give you any details of it yet. It's something that would need to be worked out. The one thing I do want to share with you all, and I do see your hands, but the one thing I do want to share with you all before I answer it and before people start to leave is here in District 3, the district I represent, has been incredibly impacted since December 30th by multiple storms. Literally, I have in my district areas where the roads have been wiped away. And our Department of Public Works has been out constantly since September 30th, working around the clock. And despite all of that, I can tell you, I was in a meeting on the coast last week where there's people who don't have a road, and Public Works was there, Christoph was there, Ann was there trying to figure out how to help people. And so I wanted to share with you all is I know that there is, as with any road project, frustration as you do the implementation. But these people really care about your opinions. They really, so if we can give them a round of applause. Thank you. I can go ahead and answer a couple quick questions for folks. Happy to do it. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank everyone for coming. And if it wasn't an issue of wanting us to come together with the committee and the public to see what we need, can you do me a big favor? I live at the Y and I do the walking Palo Alto Way, Alameda, Santa Cruz, Sharon. That sign 25 opposite the senior thing, it's too high. It's not effective. And they're using Santa Cruz Avenue North as a super highway. I stood there 5 days in a row for 30 minutes. One car was at 25, one car. And all these accidents and everything, whether it's Alameda, Sharon, Santa Cruz Avenue, can you help us do something about the speed before we start this project in 24? Could you work with the city with that?
So I can go ahead and look and see if that's the city who'd work with. And I also have to be careful because I live really close to that Y, so there's some conflicts that I may have.
No conflict. You need to.
No. I trust me. I talk to county. I do talk to county council though about conflicts, Ron. So I always make sure I check that out because I make the mistake once, I'm in trouble. But what I will tell you is I will look at it. There is a rule when it comes to speed that you have to be within a certain percent, believe it or not, to lower speed limit or to do anything there, you have to be within a specific percentile of that speed limit. And so, and that's what the average speed is that goes through there. And so, but it doesn't have anything to do, excuse me, folks, I'm not gonna, if everyone's gonna talk, then we're gonna stop. So what I'm gonna tell you is what I will do is I will go ahead and talk with engineering staff about how we go ahead and work on the signage and address those issues. Happy to do that. Yes. Yes.
There's a traffic tide going up Alameda, and that's great for slowing traffic. Our neighbor at the Y, and what I observed is the Y is the quick shortcut, and that's where everybody guns it to get through. And so I would appreciate some sort of narrowing there. I'm not seeing that anywhere beyond the Y, like going up Santa Cruz or anything. And so I don't know that it's going to solve that issue of the speed going through that little corridor, because it's kind of like, the shortcut. Especially once we get that, once we put in that little barrier on one side, it's like, oh, this is my thoroughfare.
Yeah. Everyone guns it like they're going right to 280 from there all the time. It's really scary. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One is I want to know when you're going to contact individual homeowners that are affected by that. The second thing I want to make sure is when you live there 24/7, okay? Many people are going to pass through that for a few minutes. I want you to take that into account. I don't want to be the last moment when you're just ready to do that construction and be facing with a lot of things that we're going to have an issue with. We have one chance to do this project, not two chances, and I think everybody needs to be heard. So, as I said before, I wish there was something about the public here. I think it's a very important. I am expecting a follow-up. You have my information on the card. I'm expecting a follow-up to hear about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few more on the speed round. Yes. She had her hand up.
Oh,
It's okay.
In last effort was securing funding, and I guess my question to you is there a deadline for which that funding no longer becomes available if the project does not get initiated because it gets?
Yes, the funding and grants have a deadline and, I wouldn't call them strings. There's a lot of requirements that we need to make sure that we're working towards through the grant administration process. It does have a sunset deadline. I don't know that off the top of my head, but, if we don't move forward with the project in the next X amount of years, we would lose that funding.
Our neighborhoods and more neighborhood dealing.
So, I mean, one thing I would like to say is, like, everybody complains about the why and people gunning it down that split road. Is there any reason why you can't just do away with it and just make it a right turn? Because basically you've got the whole thing set up as a right turn, but with an additional right turn split road. If you do away with that and make cars turn 90 degrees, that'll slow people down at that junction and get rid of all the problems with cycleways as well.
Thank you. So I'm obviously not an engineer, but the question's been heard.
Yeah, I can touch on it. I mean, the issues with that is there's not enough right of way.
Split. If you just have the 2 lanes stay together, but then they right turn. Yeah. Because you've already got 2 lanes.
Yeah, so that was one of the options that we did explore during the feasibility study. There's just the way the Y is configured without taking right of way. There's no way we can change the configuration. We explored it. That was an option presented by the community. Yeah, it's just, it just doesn't work. We've looked at it, and it just, the configuration and the space available.
Right turn lane that ends there, and then people have to turn 90 degrees. They would have to slow down to turn. And then beyond that, it would go slower, wouldn't they? And that will probably free up extra parking because you've got all that extra space. I think they've done it on Palo Alto, they've done away with those.
So they can, yeah, well, why don't we just agree to follow up on that point so we can take the next one? Yeah.
Can you just explain at what point, we had the 3 alternatives. At what point was the 2 lanes, 1 lane southbound? When was that? Who decided that? Was that voted on, or was that just somebody within your group that decided, or how was that?
So wasn't within my group. I wasn't there, but my understanding is that there was a community task force that looked at the design and unanimously supported that from amongst a group of from a selection of alternatives they had to look at
So
that
the task
point.
force decided not to do 1 lane.
There was a survey that was sent out to, we had over 500 responses that identified all the different alternatives. And then based on the responses, the task force saw that there was clear preference for certain alternatives in terms of having this.
Okay. Seems like the 2 lanes were just letting more people into that corridor, which is not.
Thank you. Last one.
Yeah, thank you. 3 years ago, I looked at the vehicle counts on those roads. And you have determinations as to how many vehicles are going north, how many are going south. And since I make that turn at least 2 or 3 times a day, going up Sand Hill from Alameda, I wonder what kind of traffic problems you're going to have or backup problems you're going to have. Now, do they have significantly less traffic going that direction than the other? And that's the reason you made that decision.
So I know, but I will share with you. You guys, for those of you who don't know me, I'm very candid. I know a lot of people who have attended this, it seems like they live along the corridor or they bike the corridor. My concern when I look at this design is that in the peak hour traffic may back up and people will turn right at AV and power up through Avia Monte Rosa and then come out by the Safeway. And there's a lot of kids who walk that corridor. So that unintended consequence is what weighs on my mind when I look at this. I'm trying to figure out, are we shifting traffic away from this corridor and then putting it onto a side street where I have a lot of kids go walk into a middle school? Well, and that's why, candidly, that's one of the reasons why I was like, maybe a pilot's not a bad idea, because I'd like to try to understand what any unintended consequences may be. And it doesn't mean I'm trying to derail it. We have to work out all that stuff. Yeah. We're gonna. I understand that. I'm not trying to derail it. I'm just trying to make sure that, and so we'll work through all of those things. So, but that was the last question. I really appreciate all of you coming and sharing your input tonight. Thank you very much.
I would say if you are wanting updates, please go to the website, subscribe to the project website. You can do it by Googling the project or going to Public Works and going under our projects. Thank you.